and welcome to this session. I think you probably heard this elsewhere as well, but God, I'm so pleased to be back here with people, 3D, it's wonderful. I'm going to keep this intro very short and sweet, because you're not here to listen to me. I'm Matt Brewer, training manager at Placing Platform Limited, and your speakers today are Laura Overton and Shannon Tifton. Just to give you a bit of background, Laura, renowned speaker, founder of Towards Maturity. Shannon, renowned speaker, founder of Learning Rebels. And together with Michelle Ockers, they've come together to form the Emerging Stronger initiative, which leads me into what this session is about. As L&D folks, we're often telling people how they can improve, but how do we actually improve, change, do what we should do better? It's not an easy thing. We could keep doing the same things, that's never going to work. Are we always willing to try things? Are we willing to fail? That's another question. So, what Emerging Stronger has really set about to do is to think about trying out small experiments and what we do to try and make you as L&D people and your L&D teams more effective. The session itself is going to be very interactive. You're going to go away with some practical outcomes as well, things you can try. That's the whole point of this. So, as I said, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm going to hand over to Laura and to Shannon.
Brilliant, Matt, thank you. Thank you so much. It's just fantastic to be back in the room. Not so good to be back underneath the spotlight, I have to admit, but we really want to kind of be working with you today. So if you're not sitting next to anyone and you don't mind sitting a little bit closer to somebody else, then it would be good. I'm just warning you that we're going to have a lot of opportunity today to kind of learn and connect and engage with each other. Last time I was here, I was actually presenting the very last report that I had written under the Towards Maturity research program. And it was all about us and how we can change and transform as a profession, how we deliver better business impact. But then COVID hit, I moved away from the work that I was doing, and I had the most incredible opportunity to work with Shannon and with Michelle. Michelle's face isn't up there. It ought to be, because Michelle Ockers is based down in Australia, Shannon's based in Chicago, I'm based here in London. And in the middle of 2020, we got together and thought, you know, what do we have to do to come out of this? Because this is so new. The whole pandemic was so new to us. We were being asked to do so many different things. What do we do to emerge better as a result of this? And it just started, Shannon, didn't it, as a question between us. Yep. And then we went into a podcast with Michelle Ockers, and interviewing a number of people, including Simon Brown, who's presenting in the next room on curiosity. And actually what we discovered in that podcast was that those that seemed to be responding with less anxiety and more agility were looking at the challenges ahead with 4 lenses, with a lens of community, a lens of data, a lens of technology, but also a lens of, let's just try it, let's just experiment. And we thought that was it, didn't we? We thought, okay, great podcast, and then we thought, actually, well, what happens if we start to try and use these lenses? And we had our first masterclass the beginning of last year, which actually, the irony didn't lose us, the fact that you were doing a blooming masterclass on how to emerge stronger from something we've never been in before. None of us were masters, which allowed all of us to learn and grow and share together. And as a result of that, we've really been working quite hard behind the scenes to understand what it is that we need to do to take bold action. Not just any old blasé, shoot from the hip bold, I've seen something great downstairs, I'm just going to give it a go because I'm a maverick and I'm an innovator. But what we talk about to Emerging Stronger is smart bold. So we talk about bold, which is business first, business oriented, but bold, which is open-minded, that we're willing to look at our situation and what we were doing with a broader mindset. Maybe what we were doing in the past could be adapted, could be changed. We also talked about bold being us leading and learning, trying something, stepping out, doing something different, but also learning, and that it's okay if we give ourselves permission to be able to move on. And D for deliberate, intentional, evidence-informed, and we've had some amazing evidence from our whole community here as we've been moving forward. So bold action means doing these things in this smart, bold way. And it's kind of a mantra for us working through on this project together. And for me, it kind of made sense because that's what high-performing teams that I've been researching over the last 15 years were doing. They were taking smart, bold action in their organisations that made a business difference. So how do we do that? And I think this is one of the most critical things for us, one of the lenses that we use. And by the way, we're going to give you a QR code at the end with the books that we've written on this, the ebooks, the resources, the slides, the ideas, the background research, basically everything that you're going to be wanting to take pictures on. We've got it all for you at the end of the day, and including the book on the 4 lenses. But the experiment lens was actually absolutely critical for us, and it's ended up being the thing that was the hardest for all of us, apart from you, Shannon. You seem to got it immediately. Hardest for all of us to really get our heads around, about how and why we should be giving ourselves permission to try things. And I thought it was really interesting this morning with Julie saying that, so we need to be in the place because work's moving, people are moving, being in the right moment. Do you remember she was saying, how do we iterate? How do we trial things? And we're like, yes, it's not having an MVP, but it's about, let's just explore. How do we give ourselves permission to explore? And that's what we want to do today, because there are benefits of exploration and experimentation. They're so vital. They're actually there to reduce the risk of our solutions failing. Ultimately, they're not there to replace solutions and to just let's try a bit of everything and not be known for anything. It's not about that, but it's about mitigating the risk. It's about confirming our gut sense. Evidence-informed practice means looking at outside evidence. It means it's looking at internal evidence in the organisation. It's about drawing on your own personal insight, your gut sense, and that's okay as well. How we bring those together. Say, I think I've got an idea. I think I've got a question. I think I've got a hypothesis about what might happen if I try something new in my organisation. So for us, experiments are so vital. And that's why we want to invite you to come with us here today. But we're kind of pragmatists, and we learn as we go, aren't we, at the moment? And that's a liberating thing for us, working as a threesome during COVID, is that every time we meet together, there's something new, there's something fresh, there's a new idea, there's something we've observed, that we're growing, that we're changing. So we're proud to say that I think we're taking bold action. That kind of lead, but we learn, particularly when all those around us say that didn't work. So we are very open to ideas and feedback today. But Shannon, over to you.
Over to me. All right. Well, as Laura said, when we were getting together, we were talking about the lenses. The experiment lens really did bubble up, and it almost took over our work as far as understanding what does it mean to host an experiment, right? What does it mean then to say, we have a feeling that this is a problem, or somebody has come to us, and we've all been there, right? We've all experienced that moment where somebody comes knocking at your door. Hey, we need a new customer service training. Hey, we need a new sales training, right? And then they expect us to reach into our bag of tricks and produce yet another course, right? And we've all been there. Now, this scenario then should sound familiar to you. So I'm going to ask you to read this, and within yourselves or just on a piece of paper, I'd like you to take note of what you would do. What do you think the problem is? What do you think the ask is? So just take a moment, read that, take a note, and then we'll see how we all do by the time we're finished here today. All right, everybody have something in their head? Okay. Before we get on to where we go from there, it's first to understand what the scientific method is behind experiments and conducting experiments. And what we're doing here is we are asking, our proposal is that we conduct small experiments, not something that's going to, set the laboratory on fire. but something that we can take action on. But what does that look like? Well, what it looks like here, and this comes from Model Thinkers, brilliant website. If you have not been on it, highly encourage you to do so. We're going to observe what is happening around us. We question what is happening around us, and then we look at the data. Does the data support the questions that we are asking ourselves, right? We've been in this business long enough to where we know our gut tells us that something isn't right. And we've all had that moment, that epiphany, if you will, of like, something's not right around here. But we need data to back that up, because you cannot really go to the C-suite, can you, and say, oh, my gut tells me that this is what is happening, because then they're going to kick you out the door. So you have to be able to have something to back that up with. And so your research then supports that overall question. But what you need to do here, and the point that we often skip, is building that hypothesis around that question. And that hypothesis is a statement that allows you to test a proposed solution. But we're going to back that up a little bit. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that here in just a moment. But to complete our cycle here, we take a hypothesis, which is our statement, is our question statement. Then we make a prediction around it. What do we think is going to happen? What do we want to happen? What do we hope will happen? Then we test it. And what is unique about the way that we are proposing this is that we're asking you to test little bits of your hypothesis. Right? We're not asking you to do big, giant, expensive, time-consuming tests. We want you to test out little bits. Then what we're going to do is we're going to analyze those results. And if we have to iterate, we'll iterate. If we have to start over, we'll start over. It's about being adaptable and flexible with the experiments that you are going to conduct with your proposed hypothesis that hopefully will lead you to a solution. Now that sounds like a big involved process, right? It sounds like it'll be something that will take you forever to do. And some of you might be even in this audience right now thinking, I don't have time for this. They wanted something 5 minutes ago. I don't have time for this. You have time for this. Trust the process. Okay. And part one of the process is, and I'm not going to take the time here because it does take time to explain this full process, is about observing, questioning, and researching. What we're going to focus on today is the question part. This is the part we often leap over, where we think, what really is the question that needs answering? Now, I don't know how many of you are married or are in a significant relationship, but oftentimes when you have an argument about taking out the trash, it's not about taking out the trash, is it? No. There's something that's beneath that. And so what we want to get to here is what is beneath the issue. What is beneath the problem? What is really the question that needs answering? Okay, so we're going to get to this. So now what's really going on here? So this is where I want to hear from you. So I asked you to have a moment and have a think about what you think the problem is. What do you think the question is? So now, your turn. So you guys tell me. Somebody would be kind enough to volunteer and give Matt here a run for his money. Okay.
Potentially, I think it could be that potentially the CRM tool could be wrong. So it's not necessarily a people issue, it could be a software issue.
Right? It could, yep, absolutely. It could be a process issue. Yep, it could be a technology issue. Yes, okay. Who else? Yes, sir.
So the question I'm looking at is the sales are slow and their ability to enter the data into the CRM tool is varied. So I want to understand, what does that mean? So what is sales are slow? and then kind of start working down from that. And the other one is, I don't know what it means, the CRM, the ability to enter data into the CRM tool is varied. How did we get to that conclusion? And is that because of lack of skills and whatever? It will open up to a number of questions, but I'm currently, somehow my attention is going to that.
Okay, so what does slow mean? I think that's an excellent question. What does slow mean? And then what does varied mean? And how did we get there from here? Right? Okay, good job. Yes, I'm sorry, yes ma'am, let me get over here where the microphone is, and then we'll come over here. Yes.
I think one question is do we hire the right candidates for the program,
Okay.
to the role? Because like I said, we don't have the information around that. So are they coming with some CRM knowledge already? And the second question is the details about the higher onboarding program, what it covers. Does it tick all the boxes in terms of the preparation? And assign the buddy. Is buddy actually spending enough time with the new hires? So I see 3 items there potentially.
Excellent. So is the buddy doing the right thing?
Yes.
Are we hiring the right people?
Yes.
Right?
That's what it's.
And is the right process in place?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Good. All good questions. And okay, right next to you. Okay.
Yeah, I was also thinking whether actually the body or the bodies are doing it in the same way, or is
Okay.
that different? Is that differentiated? And how many bodies are there? Are they overloaded?
Okay. Great. So we've got buddy issues. It would be apparent, and then this nice lady right here.
Mine was quite similar. So for me, I'd want to look at the 3-week induction program and have a chat with some of the new starters to say, how they felt about that program. Did it meet their needs as well? And also the buddy, is there a role profile of the buddy? Did the buddy have proper training, or were they just picked out of the sky and given the role?
Okay. So buddy issues. We seem to be having buddy issues. We'll take one more, and Laura, what would you like to contribute?
After the next one, I wanted to ask you a question.
Okay. Right over here.
I'm a little confused as to what we're looking at. Are we looking at sales or are we looking at training? I'm not sure it's clear.
I think that's a great question. That's a good jumping off point, isn't it? All right. Although I'm not going to give you the answer to that. That would spoil the fun.
So I've got a question for you, Shannon, because I think we've got a little bit of time here. And whilst we want to look at experiments, this setup process is actually a really important thing, because the questions that we have, is this a training problem or is this a sales problem? Is it about the systems? Is it about the buddying? What is it? All these questions that you've got are all questions that are really valid questions. And often we don't spend a little bit of time actually thinking, is there a smart way of getting some answers quickly? And I'm just wondering, Shannon, I think we've got just a couple of minutes. It would be great if we could actually connect with maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe pick one of those questions and just explore amongst yourselves. How would you research that? Where would you go to try and find the answers? If you only had a little bit of time, or if you had a big bit of time, where would you go to kind of surface what the question is that needs to be asked? So in just groups of 2 or 3, Shannon, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that,
That we actually say, okay, well, where would we go to surface some of the evidence, the research to help us think, answer maybe some of those questions or clarify those questions.
So where would you source your data?
Where would you source your information to be able
answer,
to understand what's going on? So just in groups of turn in groups of 2s, 3s, just to have that quick chat about where would you go, and also where would you go if you only had a little bit of time. So,
Right, so for example, if you had that buddy question.
Maybe for the bird, you see if they have because it helps them also to feel lucky that if the interaction is you have a body or okay,
So making it interviewing the person starting off with the moment of alcohol as well. So you've got some sort of soft and you can really what is because when you don't even know it's kind of or everybody's used to
Yeah, we don't know anything about the entire structure, but don't they have any experience? I don't know yet. So I think it's totally right. I also thought if it's about the food,
So, thank you everyone. So hopefully you come up with a few ideas about where you might go for research. Now, I don't know how many data analysts we've got in the room, but it's probably not that many. But the insight that we can gain from what's going on around us and the information around us actually can be really helpful. So who had a few ideas about where you might go to work out what is going on here? What kind of problem are we looking at here? So if anyone would like to raise a hand or something to kind of grab them in the chat, thank you.
Just something that occurred to me is just listening to different conversations, the conversation we're having also is that I think oftentimes it's quite easy to try to put blame on someone or a part of the organisation or individuals. And a theme that's going around this conference a lot these last couple of days is diversity of thought and collaboration. So I think the question we should be asking here is, how can we solve this? And by we, I mean bringing the different elements of the organisation together to understand what the problem is, because it's everyone's problem.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great example. We found that time and time again, that actually our community lens can surface insight and data and the data lens. So the lenses that we've been talking about, they all work together. And again, high-performing learning organisations have got more of a focus on how do we co-create better business value rather than how do we prove business value. And I think that's an interesting thing from Matthew yesterday morning about that kind of fixed mindset. Who do we blame? And how do we prove ourselves? And how do we know we were right? Versus how do we grow? How do we learn? How to explore together? So thank you so much for that observation. But there are plenty more other examples in the room as well. So who else has some thoughts about where we can kind of get more insight, more data on this situation? There's a couple, three at the back there. So if we go on this side first, yep. Matt.
Okay.
I'm loving this.
Thank you. We had a good discussion. There was many data points that we talked about. We focused a little bit in on the time, and we thought about going to observe someone who is doing that well or experienced in that, and how long it took them, and then go and observe the new hire and actually see what the differentiators were, if any. So maybe potentially some myth busting going on there for the director, potentially. So that was one thought we had.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And that's kind of very much linked into Cathy Moore's work on action mapping, isn't it? About, let's explore who's doing stuff well and who isn't, and let's focus on the critical tasks that are involved here. So, this experiment stuff draws on our insight that we've had from models that have been shared at these kinds of events for time and time again. So thank you so much for that one. Matt, that was still at the back, the other questions, I know you said you wanted to get your steps up as a result of today, but...
We were just talking about the fact that you realistically should potentially talk to people who are doing really well, she said, but also people who aren't doing really well on the same spectrum, to try and identify what the gap is, so you can go and talk to someone who's been here maybe 2 months or 3 months, and then see why they're doing really well, and then talk to people who aren't doing so well and try and figure out where the differences lie for them.
Yes. A lot of times when you think about, people are supposed to be doing X, right? They're supposed to be doing X. However, the door knocker comes and tells us that they're doing this, right? And so somewhere there's a gap. It's like they're here, they're supposed to be here. What's happened in between, right? And I think having those sorts of interviews becomes an important part of filling in those blanks. So thank you for that.
Going back to the hires, there's a question if the role and responsibility was defined well and what they're supposed to do, and then also what good looks like. So if we finish the program, what we're actually supposed to deliver, because if that's not clear, I don't know what to focus on during the training program.
Right.
So I'm lost, and maybe I won't focus on the right things.
Right. Excellent. Okay.
Look, I think for me, what your comment flags there is the fact that there are other people who've got this problem. There are other people in the organisation who are also trying to solve this problem. So, to your point, how do we connect? How do we collaborate together in that space? So that's fantastic. We've got a couple over here as well, and then we will move on. Thank you.
Looking at spending more time than anticipated, I'm assuming that solves the problem. So then we can look at that and see it's a common problem across the board. How much time is being spent there, because perhaps within that sentence we probably have a solution or a pathway to a solution.
So basically what you're saying there is about seeing how we spend our time, and seeing where they're spending their time and where it's being spent.
Sorry, no. You said to spend more time with IT support and
Okay.
training body.
All right.
So perhaps what's in there, it was analysis. What are we covering in there?
Okay.
And why? And then perhaps is it a similar problem across the group? And then perhaps identify where the gaps are.
So going to the help desk environment, I was talking to Lisa Johnson, who is chairing, and I met her when she was working at Bernardo's, and the story that stuck with me is that she stuck her, Matt, we were talking about this, she stuck her training department regularly, daily, talking to the help desk. What are the problems coming in? What are the issues coming in? And then they use that data and insight to target where they were going to be going there. So thank you so much. And then I think last one with Phil, thank you.
Thank you. And because it's me and it's emotion, then that may be why. But for me, everything, the first 3 paragraphs on there are background noise. The signal is the last sentence. That's the bit we need to focus on, because the presenting problem, so if I was to look at it from a scientific point of view, the presenting problem is the sales directors of sales anxiety. That's the problem. What data do we have that process is too slow? We don't have any. What data do we have that's ineffective? We don't have any. Well, so, okay, let's get into that. That's where we need to begin. The rest of it is, for me, is important. But that's not where I wouldn't begin there. I would begin at that bit, because that's the presenting problem. That's right.
And again, Phil, what that shows is diversity of thought. In fact, what the whole of this process shows is that having that diversity of thought, the different perspectives on this, combined with a bit of the information, the data from internal systems, external systems, maybe even some external research that's been done in areas like this, all of that can come together relatively quickly. We spent, 5 minutes on this, maybe 7. And I don't know about you, but I'm already thinking, there's a whole range of different things that we can incorporate into our normal day-to-day work, as well as add on quite quickly, quite simply, in order to give us a real broad understanding of what is going on right here. So hopefully that will give you some thoughts about how you might explore a little bit more when you go back to work. So Shannon, thank you for letting me pop in there. I'll move away again.
That's okay. It's a great exercise to go through, is to think about what is underpinning this. And now how can we find information that may tell us one way or the other whether or not this is really an issue. And I appreciate what Phil just said there about that last sentence. The director of sales is becoming anxious, that the process is too slow and ineffective. That's definitely the button that's been pushed, right? And that's probably the door knocker, right? And so now he or she is feeling that there is something amiss. My people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, now fix it. That's what they're in your doorway saying, right? And so now there's, what data do we have to support that the process is too slow, that the systems are ineffective, could be true, could be not, could be a people issue, could be a culture issue, could be a process issue, right? All of these things come to mind. But typically what happens here is we have what I refer to as the race to solution. Because we're problem solvers. And so we immediately start thinking of how are we going to solve the problem. So the button pusher came, and so now we're answering the call. And so we might be looking at, is there issues with buddies? Is there issues with timing? Is there issues with training? Is there issues with people, right? And typically we pick one, and we pick the one that seems to make the most sense, and the one that seems to agree the most with what our gut feelings are. Then we say, we'll do that. And what we've done is maybe we've found a solution, maybe we have. But is it really a solution that is going to solve the problem in its entirety? And not just saying, well, I don't like a pizza that has everything on it, so I'm just going to pick some of the things off that I don't like, and I'll just go ahead and move on with that. That doesn't solve the issue, does it? I still have a pizza I don't like. Right? Now, how do we not do this? Because it's such an ingrained habit. This is what we do. We're L&D people. We're here to solve problems, and we pride ourselves on being able to solve problems. So now what do? Well, we go back to this. We go back to determining what is really the question that needs answering. And there may be several questions that need answering. But where do you go from here? Right? What is the appropriate direction that we want to take based on observing what's around us and the data to support the question? So when you go out and you are talking to those buddies and you go out and you do investigate the systems, what is it that you're discovering that says, you know what, I think this is actually the question. This is the question at hand. It's not the solution, it's the question. You want to answer a question. You don't want to try to solve a problem just yet because we're not really sure what the problem is. So what I'm asking you to do is to back away from thinking about what problem is it that I'm trying to solve, because oftentimes we start off, and I do this too, we start off with, be sure that you know what problem it is you're trying to solve, right? That's the mantra. But there's a beginning part the beginning part of that is making sure that we're solving the problem that addresses the question that needs to be asked. Okay, so Laura?
So I've been struggling with this because I used to have a statistic that I quoted every single year that only 4 out of 5 of us recommend a solution before understanding the problem. It's so in my DNA to say what's the problem. and to really step back and say, actually, what's the question? It's a very simple thing that we can share with you in terms of knowledge, but in terms of practice, it's so hard to do. So Shannon, this is just an example here. It could be that as a result, and pull me up if I've got this wrong, because you will, and you always do. It could be as a result of looking at all of this insight, and we've combined it all together for our organisation. Everything's going to be different in our organisation. That it feels like the issue is that new salespeople aren't confident or competent in their new role, and therefore they don't have time to kind of do the basic data. So maybe it's an issue of their confidence. So the question might be, well, okay, after 3 weeks of training, maybe people feel it is a training problem. You know, why is it they're still lacking in confidence? That might be the question that we need to ask of ourselves. And that's a horrible question to ask, because we're questioning our own work potentially in this scenario. In your scenario, it might be different. But in this scenario, we're questioning ourselves, and that's tough because so you can maybe you do it privately. You know what I mean? Maybe you ask that question just of yourselves rather than going to go out to the world with it. But then the idea of a hypothesis is that, okay, if I've got this question, how will I then explore what that means? So that means we've got to have a sense of, you know, if I do something, will it have a predictive impact on the future? So for example, I might say, my hypothesis is, if salespeople are more confident after the entire training, so if we address the confidence issue, will it produce more quality sales more quickly? That's quite a broad statement, but there is a predictive process in that, isn't there?
Yes.
Sometimes we put a hypothesis, don't we, as if we do this thing, then everything will get better.
Right.
And that's a solution. So if we do something, like if we implement an initiative, then that will be a solution. And a hypothesis is there to be broad, so that you can kind of explore it. So I know we're talking a lot of science language, but most of us aren't scientists, but it's using the language to get us into this sense of, okay, let's just explore it, because then the fun bit comes. Bear with us now, we're in the messy middle, the fun bit is coming, because when we can get to a good hypothesis, we can have fun with it, it can release our creativity, it releases our potential in the organisation. Would you say that's right? Is it a hypothesis or a solution?
This is a hypothesis. So this is not a race to a solution. Because what we want to try to find out is the answer to the question. So the question, after 3 weeks of training, why are salespeople still lacking in confidence? Now, we oftentimes do jump to that bottom point because that is the button pusher. You know, why is the sales director feeling anxious? Why does the sales director feel that things are too slow and ineffective? And those are great questions to ask, but we're not there yet. We got to jump up to the top. You know, so the issue here is that they're not hitting the ground running. Why not? Why not? And it may not be a training problem. Oftentimes our first instincts, and let's be honest here, our first instinct is to say, what's wrong with the new hire process? What's wrong with the onboarding training? So if we're really honest with ourselves, we usually start there. But really the question that needs answering at this point is, why are they still not confident after 3 weeks? That may be a people issue, it still may be a process issue, it may very well be a training issue, but we don't know that yet. All we know is that they're not feeling confident, and because they're not feeling confident, something's not happening.
You know, I think it's quite critical that at this stage we come up with this hypothesis that is broad and it's not solutions-based. So we've got to feel up here, we need a bit of a shouting out here. Example. First one, we want to ask you to just shout out, is this a hypothesis or is this actually a solution that we want to get tested? So this is an easy one because it's the one we just put up earlier that we said was a hypothesis. So is this a hypothesis or is this a solution? Shout it out.
Hypothesis. Very good. Okay, and from the diaphragm, people. We know you have it in you. Okay.
Next one. If we give each salesperson a quick reference guide, then they will enter data into the CRM more efficiently. Is this a hypothesis or is it a solution?
Solution.
Okay. Next one. Okay, next one. If line managers coach teams every other week, they'll get more quality sales more quickly. Hypothesis or solution? Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's just a little bit of a, ooh, I'm not 100% sure there.
I'm not sure. What do you, okay, so let's take some hands here. Hypothesis? Solution. Yes, solution people, yes. Why is this a solution? I'm looking straight at you, making eye contact with the facilitator. That's always a danger.
Because it's got an action that you would actually do.
Yeah,
Because it's got an action you could do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's almost like we are testing our solution. We think coaching's going to work. So we're testing whether or not our solution is going to work. So
it boxes you in.
Yeah. You don't want to be boxed. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Last one. If we gave salespeople control over data entry, then they will enter more quality data. Hypothesis or solution? And it's okay to everyone shout out all at the same time. Go. Okay. Yes. And the reason it's a hypothesis is that there's all kinds of different things that we could explore within that to see whether or not it's true. And that's the whole thing. It's about having lots of things, different types of stuff that we could explore to see whether that issue is true. And if we can explore different things, then one of those will surface as giving us a foundation of something that will work for us in practice. Whereas the other solutions in the middle, if we explore those, all we're doing is, again, it's that fixed mindset approach that Matthew was talking about yesterday. It's like, how can I prove I'm right? I need to prove I'm right. And actually, no, we need to grow, we need to learn. And a hypothesis sets us free to do that. So, Shannon, we then have some fun stuff going on now. Free the mice, Shannon.
Free the mice.
Free the mice now.
Free the mice. Free the mice. Okay, so the fun bit about this, and let me go back here real quick, is the one way to help you think about the delineation between a hypothesis and a solution is one is action-based and one is behavior-based. So you think about, I want to adjust a behavior, or I want to adjust the lead into that behavior. So if you think about, if people were more connected, that's more of a feeling, isn't it? You know, it's not something truly definitive like coaching. Coaching is a definitive action. This is something they will do. Versus if we gave people control, that's also a feeling of control. You know, that's sort of a behavior that we can branch off of. And when we branch off, then what happens is that we free the mice. And so the key here is Trojan mice. We're going to talk about Trojan mice. And Trojan mice is actually from Ewan Semple. And there's a website, and I thought I had attributed it here, and I apologize for not doing that, but it will be in the resources that you'll get. Because this was, I wish it were my idea because it's grand, and I would love to be able to have such a grand idea. Unleash the Trojan mice. Don't do big things or spend loads of money. Small, nimble things. Right? When we think of experiments, like I said at the beginning, is we often think of something large. We often think of pilots. Right? So how many of you conduct pilots of your training programs? Right? Okay. And some of you may not do official pilots, but you may do something that I refer to as pilot as a first class. So the very first class that you give, that's all of a sudden your pilot, right? How many of you are doing that? Again, let's be honest, yes, we know that it happens. Okay, now what we're asking you to do is we're asking you to back away from that and think of it as a bunch of little things that you can do which absolutely support failure. Failure, yes, failure. We want you to feel safe to fail, that it's okay to fail, because often when we're at the pilot stage, it's too late to fail, right? Because when we're at the pilot stage, what we're doing is we're already testing a solution. The pilot is the solution. We're just testing different variables within that solution to see whether or not the time is okay, or the workbooks are all right, or if the links work, or what have you. That's what the pilot does. And so if we're at that stage, we're already too far down the line. So what we're saying here is that when you do small things, and there's the website, I thought I had it here. So there's the website where you can read more about this, it's the testing of very many small ideas to see whether or not you're leading to the right path to solution. That's the fun bit. Because you want to be able to do these little quick, fast things to be able to take away from not doing pilots immediately. Because like I said, the pilot becomes the solution. So these are all of the things that happen with phased implementation pilots, is that we have decided that this is the answer. And so now what I'm going to ask you to do is when you get to that stage of pilot, where we're ready to pilot something, is to ask these questions. Did we differentiate ideas? Did we really go out and explore different ideas for this? When we think about a buddy system in our example, in our scenario, is there something different that we could be doing? What could we do besides a buddy system? Or how can we enhance a buddy system? Maybe it's not 2 people, maybe it's 3 people. Maybe it's a community rather than a pair. Right? So we're asking you to think about how can we bring different ideas into the conversation, and thinking about what points did we test before we got to that ultimate solution. Thinking about, we've done this pilot before, and oh my gosh, right? How many customer service programs do we need to create within our organizations? Apparently many. Believe me, I've been there. I've been in this industry for over 20 years. I've seen my fair share of leadership development, sales, and onboarding and customer service. Every organization seems to think that theirs is unique. You feel me? Okay. So now it's, how is it that this program is going to be different? How is it really going to answer the question that we have determined is important enough to be asked? Okay. So here I'm giving you food for thought, because we don't think about your pilots as the Trojan horse, right? And we all know the story. So what's inside the horse are all of the Trojan mice just screaming to get out. Play with me, they say. Run with it. Come up with different ideas. And one of the things that is going to be available to you at the end of this when we put up the QR code is just a very simple map of different sorts of topics for experiments, which we're going to cover a few of them here, which is thinking about which direction do we want to go in? Do we want to try something crazy? Do we want to try something different? Do we want to try something that is a piggyback on somebody else's idea? But here we're going to start, which is an example. So if our hypothesis is, and I'm throwing a different one at you because there are always different things to consider. If new managers participate in leadership training sooner, then they may be less likely to leave before reaching 90 days, answering the question of why are managers leaving us? So this was built off of a retention question. Why are managers leaving us? Well, okay, well, let's not put it into leadership training. Let's not say that leadership training is the problem or the solution, but let's say that maybe there's something that they can do prior. What is it? Well, if we think about this from a training perspective, if we think about it purely from training is the source, training is the truth, Then what happens is we test the length of the curriculum, we test the type of curriculum, we test the different activities associated with the curriculum. So what I'm asking you to do is shatter the box of the program. The program is not the scaffold of learning. People are the scaffold of learning. So subsequently then we say, test the retention part of this. So why is it that people are not staying with us beyond 90 days, right? So now that opens up the world, doesn't it? If we ask that question in a slightly different way, we've got all of this happening in front of us. Small groups or informal gatherings, or maybe a self-directed, something giving them control over what they do and when they see it. Or maybe there's a mentoring element here. So it's about asking, what if we? What if we did this? Oftentimes we ask the why not question. Why not try this? Or why try this? The issue with those two phrases of questions is that you're automatically thinking of why something may or may not work. It's the wrong mindset here. What you want to say is, hey, let's just give it a go. If it fails, if it's small and it fails, great, no harm, no foul. Right? You try it with 5 people, you try it with 2 people, right? So it's okay. So then how about if we becomes another phrase that you can use. How about if we try X? How about if we try Y?
And this is a phrase that we want you to kind of really tune into, because we're going to be moving into why not? Let's explore that right now. I mean, we've got a couple of examples that are coming through about what we were kind of playing around with, weren't we, Shannon, in the next slide, which was, you know, so that if we had that hypothesis, so one of the things is, hey, let's give new managers full access to one of those massive content libraries that we may or may not have. And let's see what happens. Another one might be, let's give them access to different topics for them to moderate on a cohort. Maybe that's a little bit different from the normal approaches that we take. And sometimes maybe it's something that's fast. If we be challenged, if we constrain our thinking, what experiment can we do in a really short space of time? That then might release something else. What if we just try this? We've only got an afternoon. We can only have access to these people. What if we just try this out? So this whole idea of the Trojan mice is that we ask the what if question in so many different spaces. We say, okay, well, what's the obvious thing? What if we just try and do what we normally do, but maybe tweak it a little bit? That's kind of obvious. But then let's go completely mad and do something completely on the other side of the scale. What if we do that? It may be a crazy experiment. It may be that you don't do it, but it might trigger something else in you that is worth it. What if we do something really quickly in a short space of time? So what we want to do with you now is to say, we would like to have us in our own groups. Group 1 on this side, you're group 1, so you're going to be working on the hypothesis of that scenario of if a new hire are more fully supported rather than having self-directed learning, then this will lead to a better productivity results in the first 30 days. Don't question it too hard, just assume there's a whole shed load of evidence that has led you to this hypothesis. Because that's the whole point of why we've been talking about this so far. But that's your hypothesis. So what we'd like to do in your small groups is say, okay, what are the kind of little mice that we could set free? What are the what-if statements that we could actually bring together as a little Trojan mice? And we'd like you in your groups of 3 to come up with something that's obvious, but maybe really test yourself and say, come up with something completely off the wall, completely wacky, and maybe something that can be done super speedy. We had a few little opportunities to chat there. It's always good when you can free the mice on somebody else's project, I think. That's one of the things that we found in our masterclass. We were so much better at coming up with little ideas for everybody else than we were for ourselves. So that's why community is so powerful and so important. Did anyone have a fun idea in or a good idea or a really bad idea in your group? Hi, yes, oh Matt, super fast. Maybe we'll do a wave, we'll start here and then we'll move down and then come back round. So be aware of that one. Great. Tell us your idea that you thought you could try and it'll be okay to fail.
So we thought we could probably do is the manager who complained it's too slow, put into the process.
Yeah.
You know, and if he gets it wrong, it doesn't really matter. But I think we thought that was like quite a crazy idea.
Yeah.
It's quite often people say, oh yeah, it's not working, and they don't understand the complexity of it. And if he came to it quickly, then maybe it's not a problem.
Brilliant. Put the manager through the process. Tell us what's wrong, where it's going. We're not going to evaluate the ideas. Now, actually, Matt, rather than making you go up and down, I would quite like to go through the room as we go back. So, are there any in the middle of the section over here who had a few ideas that you thought, actually, I'd like to give it a go? Thank you, lady with the lovely orange flowers. For being volunteered by your super generous discussion group.
Okay, so maybe the first mad idea is to have somewhat of a yam jam, kind of like an open forum of discussion, whether it be online or in a room with the nervous sales manager.
Brilliant.
And more, so an open
Excellent.
conversation.
So it's funny how we think these are crazy ideas, but the rest of us are thinking, actually, that's a pretty good one. we could actually do that. So thank you, and a fast one as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty fast too, so combine the two together, hey, you get magic. Oh, we're having one at the beginning. So this one is for the new hires are fully supported, so we're trying to work out how we can get them fully supported.
Yeah, so we thought a bit crazy talk, maybe not less than a day, but having over time, an AI coach that can actually help you with IT support and your body. So this, but we learn everything about the system and what questions are being asked, and we'll be able to help this person. And if the person doesn't get their answer, there is a big red button saying, "Please give me help." And with your live buddy, make them feel more supported every day and have personalized coaching basically on the spot.
Yeah,
I love that. So it's like an easy button.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We're all going to be going down to the exhibition floor in a moment. So these are some of the things that you can kind of be looking at with a new space. Before we leave this one, is there anyone at the back who's got another experiment that they would like to share with us? As I say, Matt's at the back and then move across and down. Okay, in which case you can start from the beginning. Let's have a look at this other one about convincing salespeople that if they enter their data, then they're actually going to get more chance of getting a sale. What kind of experiments did you come across in this kind of first group of people here?
We're going to be playing.
Oh, we're going to go midway. Okay, this is good because again, get Matt stepped up. We can send him back, forward, back, perfect.
I think this might be like a crazy thing, but we were talking about do they know which value they're creating? So maybe we should stop them and say, okay, today you have this customer, but next week you have the other customer, and then you can kind of feel your own pain if it's not put out correctly.
I like that. Nice idea. And at the back as well. Let's see some of those. I know you were talking well. There's a lovely group of people at the back there. Matt, I know one of them has got a fantastic experiment to just give us a share of. Thank you.
Hello, so our idea was to create a learning game, but because we only have half a day, that we do it just completely with like whiteboards and stuff like that. Had two groups of people, give one set the right data and the other set the wrong data, and they had to kind of like write it up on a whiteboard, and if the information was wrong, then people got out, so you'd end up with one team that lost, but it was because the data was wrong, and another team that succeeded because they had the right data, and then they'd feel unfair. So needs a lot of thinking through, but something like that.
Fantastic. So it's a kind of a little solution within a hypothesis. It's just one of the things that you can try without having to invest heavily, maybe with some post-it notes and stuff like that, and it doesn't matter if it fails. So a great example, isn't that?
Yes, absolutely.
For a Trojan mice in that space. And then finally, at the front of the room here, I got some big smiles, actually from this lady here. It means that she's just bursting to share your little Trojan mice.
We talked a lot about getting into the hearts and minds of these people so that they understood the impact of what was happening, because they might sometimes only just see their little bit. So we talked about doing some scenarios
scenarios, some similar things to Sabina's at the back, but getting people further down the chain, coming to talk to the people about the impact for them of them not inputting things right, so they could really understand it and feel it.
Brilliant, thank you so much for that. So hopefully this exercise is kind of like showing that releasing the mice can be quite fun and can be quite short. So that's really what we wanted to kind of share with you today, the fact that, you know, just getting into the habit of thinking about some of these things is about releasing us, liberating us into new ways of thinking, to that iterative thing that Julie was talking about together. The curiosity actually is important, that we want to explore rather than we want to prove ourselves. But by exploring, we'll get a faster, smarter solution by which we can then prove ourselves. But we do need to give ourselves some permission to do this, to permission to think in this way. And actually one of the things that we've been exploring in the masterclass is the idea of us keeping a field book. Charles Darwin used to keep a little notebook in his back pocket where he just made observations. Now you might be going through a process like a performance needs analysis or a performance consulting conversation, or you might just be hanging out with people. But keeping a notebook where you can observe what are you seeing, what are other people asking, that you can go back and reflect to, we think is actually going to be quite important. And so really we want to leave you with the idea of that there are benefits of experiments. We want to come back to this. It actually helps you stop the risk. It creates and liberates freedom in your own thinking. And it stops us from racing to solutions, because every part of this scientific process is a part where we could go and run off and be a solution. We found this out, let's have a solution. We've got a hypothesis, let's test a solution. This is just about saying, okay, let's hold back and let's see what's happening in our day-to-day work. So we're hoping that these summary slides, which we're going to have available for you, will be really, really helpful to you. And this whole thing is about these experiments making you successful. So Shannon's designed these amazing slides for you, not for us to present and to run up, but for you to print off and stick on your wall, because we're talking about habits here. We're talking about changing the way we think and liberating our own thinking to be the kind of learning professionals that can respond to the needs that we were hearing about in the forum this morning. So before we close off, when I was having a conversation with Matt about this earlier this week, we're saying this is what we're trying to do. I said, Matt, what's going on in your life right now? New job, new opportunity, new training solution, new platforms, it's everything. And we were just having this discussion, and I thought, I wonder if someone like Matt, if you kept a field book and just to observe what was going on in your world of work right now, whether or not it might release, I know you're super creative, but release even more ideas about how to meet the needs of the organisation. So it made me think, our conversation, of a hypothesis that if we capture our own observations and experiments in the environments around us, if we actually intentionally capture our thinking and then just have a look through it, our own observations, we'll be able to uncover new opportunities that add better business impact. So as a result of that, we've created some little field journals with a series of questions to ask yourself. And if you fancy being part of that experiment, you don't have to report your data back, but it would be quite nice if you did kind of just feedback to say, well, that was a crazy idea, Laura, and in no way did it work, and it didn't work for this reason. Then we want to invite you. We've got 12 of them, and we've also got 12 labels to stick in the front of any notebook that you have, just to maybe try it for 30 days. So this QR code is a QR code that if you send this, it will send you to sending me an email. Now I'm not a spammer, I don't have time to do all that kind of stuff. But what I have done is I've set my out of office up for the next half an hour to basically give you access to a Padlet with all of these resources, all of the research, all of the models from model thinkers that we think were really smart for you, all of the slides, all of the things that we can talk about, the e-books, the template for running off that program, little notebook program as well. So just send it, hit send, you'll get all of the resources immediately. I've only got it live for the next half hour because it is my email and I don't want sort of like my mum having it, because she's going to have a bit of a problem getting this out of office reply. But we just want to say thank you for being part of the process. And if you want to try out the book, just put me a little note in the email saying, I'm going to try the book out. I won't hassle you, but it's just super cool to know if you're intending to just have an experiment with yourself as well. So if you've got questions, which obviously in a situation of experiments and curiosity we hope you will have, you can find Shannon and I on LinkedIn. You can ask the question. Of course you can come up now as well. And Shannon's got the books. And Matt, are we on time?
Just about.
I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully it's been useful for you. And thank you so much for sharing your ideas and being part of this experiment with us. Thank you.